And I'm going to say the harsh truth. Well, let me first say that I completely agree. I do think that domestic violence is drastically worse than sports betting, especially a $1,500 bet. I mean, there are people that are permanently scarred. There are people that are permanently I mean, people that lose lives. People that um, it, domestic violence should never be the case. You should never be an option for somebody. So I agree with the fact that domestic violence should be taken 10 times more seriously than sports betting. Whether it's a $1,500 bet, whether it's a $15 million bet, domestic violence, you're physically harming somebody. Usually, now it's not always the case, but usually of the opposite sex. And if we're talking about NFL players, the opposite sex is women. So I think that I definitely think that domestic violence should be taken 10 times more seriously than sports betting. That's how I feel. But let me be drastically honest, and let me be plain. Let me say the harsh truth. The NFL is going to crack down on sports betting or gambling faster than they're going to crack down on, or more severely than they're going to crack down on domestic violence, because domestic violence does not hurt their image as much as sports betting, and they know this. Domestic violence hurts the image of whoever's doing it more than it hurts the NFL. Now, the NFL's image usually gets tarnished how they react to it. As brutally honest as I can be, the NFL cares more about sports betting than domestic violence, because sports betting, insider sports betting, or insider, what Calvin Ridley does affects them more than domestic violence. Because again, if you go back to what Calvin Ridley did, while it was a small sports bet in the grand scheme of things, you have people like Emmanuel Acho that will put a 10, 15, 30-second clip out of Calvin Ridley avoiding tackles, and now people are going to say, hey, I knew something was up. He was probably avoiding tackles because he was sports betting. And now that completely tarnishes the integrity of the game, which means you're completely looking at the NFL differently, because you think that if one person gets caught sports betting, everyone's sports betting, and if one person gets caught insider trading, everyone's insider trading. That's what the NFL is scared of. They don't care. And it's as hard as it is to say and hear, they don't care about no domestic violence issue, because the domestic violence issue hurts more the person that's doing is doing the harm than the NFL. So the NFL is just going to make face, and they're going to do something. So, you don't say, what are you doing, NFL? They're going to do something. But they don't care that much. And it's horrible to say, but that's true. That's true. And it's not right, but it's true. And that's why the NFL doesn't do much. Do I think it's wrong? Yes. Do I think that should drastically change? Yes. But again, that's why there's not a player on the logo of the NFL. That's why it's a shield. They care more about this shield. They care more about the brand of the NFL than the player. And the brand of the NFL is tarnished more by insider sports betting than domestic violence. Is that correct? No. Is it right? No. I'm going to say correct. Is it right? No. Should that be flipped? Of course. I think domestic violence should be taken incredibly seriously. I grew up with two women in the house. Well, two women, three now with my niece. So I grew up all women. Of course, I have a soft spot for domestic violence. And I think domestic violence should be taken a lot more seriously than sports betting. But again, while that's how I feel, That's not what is, especially when you talk about the NFL, who's in bed with the sports betting companies, yet still the last thing they want is their product to be tarnished, the integrity wise of the product. And the integrity wise of the product is damaged more by a player or a team or an owner sports betting the game that they play more than a player getting involved in domestic violence. In fact, the league is more tarnished, or the league is tarnished only by the reaction, not the fact that the player is the one that got to deal with that. The league is more is more in jeopardy of the reaction or how it handles it, not the actual domestic violence. And that is why they will forever and always look at sports gambling more severely than domestic violence, which isn't right, but is true.